This is the Halftime Show with Omar Adori on Pulse 95.
Sure is that time. It's the Halftime Show with Omar Adori. I'm your host, covering everything sport, international and local. Thank you very much for connecting with me today. Love the fact that we're here together on the Halftime Show in the heart of Sharjah. So buckle up, guys, because we got a great show. And before we start the show, normally the first comers on the Instagram Live or someone that sends me a message, I kind of give them a shout. So shout out to Shaymat, Reem, Fahima, Coach Nick, Leah, and everyone else who's connected with us on the Pulse95Radio.com. Now, listen, guys, on today's show, in modern sport, we take a look at normally role models. But what if the role models have, let's say, a different way of preparing themselves? And the reason why I say that is because one of the successful Premier League strikers at the moment has a couple of bad habits, and those bad habits actually are a way that he gets himself ready for competition. Now, he's broken all sorts of records and kind of been a late bloomer in the league. Jamie Vardy's the person we're focusing on today, so that's the first thing. And speaking about bad habits, now normally I tend to speak to you guys and get a lot of feedback, and sometimes you inspire me to put a show together or a segment or two. Now, one of my listeners, Debo, all the way from Florida, said to me, Omar, do something on habits. Look into, Atomic Habits. And I thought, it's great because I'm currently reading a book called The Power of Habit, and that's by Charles Duhigg. So I thought, let me give you a couple of things that I've taken from the book and bring that into context for you today. UFC is heading over to Fight Island in the UAE, so what better time than to announce that? Shout out to Muhammad as well, Kawi as well, for always providing me with the latest information in UFC. We got that. And all your questions and answers on the only place to be at 3, the Halftime Show on Pulse 95.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Adori on Pulse 95.
Salam, welcome back to the Halftime Show with Omar Adori. Thank you very much for connecting with me. Shout out to Super Mario and Gabby, who produced the magic in getting these shows commercial and ad-free for you on the YouTube as well, straight after we're done. These guys are just incredible. So shout out to Super Mario and Olivia Rose as well, who's in the building, and everyone who's on Instagram Live. Thank you very much for connecting. And I have to also just take a second out to say thank you for everyone that sent me a message on Insta regarding Reset. Now, it's not something I imagined happening, but Reset is an Amazon bestseller. How that happened, I have no idea, but I have a huge thank you for everyone that has sent messages, bought the book, supported the book, and even related to the book. I think that's kind of the most important thing. A lot of people kind of think it's your kind of average self-help, but simplifying it was really hard. And today, actually, I bumped into I don't know if you guys, well, I'm sure you guys know him, Charlie Sloth, who's huge in the UK, one of the biggest radio DJs. And he was at my barbershop. Shout out to Ahmed. And I was talking to him about the book and everything, and he was genuinely interested, which is nice to see, because I think everyone can reset, and everyone has the ability to be able to reset, whether it's your mindset, whether it's nutrition, whether it's training, whether it's recovery, or even just resetting your environment. So being able to speak to someone like that, who's very grounded, really humble, was great to see. So shout out to Charlie Sloth. Right, okay, so on the show today, now when you look at normally successful people, the first thing you can look at is how they got there and what their background is. But sometimes if they have certain habits, you can't really say that's wrong, because they still managed to get the success they've had. Now, Jamie Vardy, who plays for Leicester City, is someone that was quite a late bloomer, so to speak. And if you look at his record, he was, at Halifax Town in the Conference North, and he went to Fleetwood in the Conference Premier. And for those that don't know, obviously apart from the Premier League and all the 4 divisions after that, there's also non-league football. So when you start there, you really start, in a different, it's a different experience. It's a different, battle that you have to face mentally, physically. It's much more demanding, much more challenging, because you haven't made it, right? So he's done that, and then he moved to Leicester City, and he moved to Leicester City in when was it? 2012 in the Championship, right? 2012, 2013, and he started his, let's say, the rise of his career. Now, Jamie Vardy has scored 205 goals in 410 caps. Okay, for those that don't know, that's a lot of goals, okay? So he's done that. However, he has a couple of habits, and, we don't judge here, but the habits that he does have might have the youngsters look up and say, maybe we can do that, without going through what Jamie Vardy's gone through. Now, amongst those habits is 3 Red Bulls before a game, and a packet of cigarettes. Now, I'm not saying he smokes the whole packet, but he does like to smoke cigarettes. So looking at that now and looking at his success and having won a Premier League title, which, by the way, not everyone does, that in itself, for our youth, let's say, if they're looking at that, and maybe, some of the parents out there can answer this question, what do they think of it? Do they think they can get away with it? Do they look at that and say, oh, no, it's not the right preparation? Because nowadays, especially with social media, especially with everything that we kind of face, there's so many things that kind of tells us what's right and wrong. Now, there isn't no, obviously, as long as you're not breaking any rules, there's no right or wrong when it comes down to preparation. However, through science and sports science and nutrition and the way that you live and the way that you recover and sleep and fuel is something that we teach the youth nowadays. Now, it's not just with international teams, it could be with club teams, or it could be just an academy or a grassroots setup. So the question I have for you today, by Jamie Vardy having these habits, does that affect the modern day footballer, the aspiring day footballer? As you know, last week I had Jermaine Pennant on the show, and he's had his ups and downs, but he was really interesting in how he responded to different coaches. We spoke about Harry Redknapp, we spoke about Arsene Wenger, we spoke about all the different places he's been to, which has helped his character. Now, that's lifelong lessons. And so I was thinking about this yesterday, and actually this morning, Murad, shout out to Murad, sent me a message of this screenshot of Jamie Vardy walking out of camp with a Red Bull and a packet of cigarettes in his hands. Now, I don't personally smoke, but for those that do, to their own. But this is where I thought, now, if one of my footballers saw that and thought it's okay to do that, would I advise him against it? Absolutely. But would I tell him it's, completely wrong? Again, Jamie Vardy's Jamie Vardy. He's done his thing. He's really represented. And some may argue should still be involved in international football with England, despite him retiring because he wanted to. So my question for you, do habits of the professional athlete in the modern day affect our children and the way they think? 4215 اتصالات or text me, or actually no, don't text me, slide into my DMs at Omar Al-Duri and let me know. Coming up next, now speaking of habits, I'm reading a book called The Power of Habit, and someone that listens to the show regularly, Debo, all the way from Florida, said to me, Omar, throw me something about habits. I really want to talk about that. I really want to kind of understand more about that. So if you have any bad habits or you have something you want to share it with me, 4215, or slide into my DMs during the commercials, and I'm going to put some Georgia Smith for you because I'm feeling the UK vibe right now. So we'll be right back after this. Enjoy.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri on Pulse 95.
Salam, welcome back to the Halftime Show. Thank you very much for connecting with me. And beneath, now I know that AUH means, okay, I know what that means. The airport code. Thank you for filling me in on all the small details. Obviously, you guys throw in some great comments during the break, and we were just talking about habits. Now, through habits, several things come out of that. Debo was talking to me about atomic habits. Now, let's ask, what is an atomic habit first, and then looking at that, how do you build an atomic? Now, for anyone that doesn't know about a habit is something that obviously you build up, and it's something that you might not consciously know you're doing. Now, something that consistently happens is probably harder to break unless you realize what it is, and I think that's the key of looking at the bits and pieces when it comes down to atomic habits. Now, even more information than that, starting with an incredibly small habit, make it so easy that you can't say no. So try not to go for something too big when it comes down to the habitual things that you do, and then increase your habit in very small ways. Now, some people say 21 days, some people say 3 weeks, some people say months even, but that's where I'm kind of diving into it. Very, very small thing. Let's say leaving your room in the morning without doing your bed. Now, with that in itself, you already have to fix something when you come back. This is just the smallest thing, but we are talking on a scale now from the smallest to the biggest. Now, if you don't do that, now when you come back and you're late and it's after work and you're kind of, a bit agitated, and then you have to fix your bed and then get back into bed, it kind of feels like there's two ways of seeing it. Why do I need to fix it if it's going to be messy anyway? And the other thing is what? It's a fresh bed. Fresh rest, sleep, recover, reset. That's kind of the vibe I'm going with when it comes down to habits. Now, if you don't get the habit done early on, and if you don't end up actually, let's say, fixing this thing that you've been trying to work on, not necessarily just fixing, but kind of adjusting the habit, then that's where I think patience and mindfulness is very, very key. When it comes down to training, we're going to go into training. When it comes down to the training side of things, let's say looking at it from that kind of aspect, you're probably thinking, well, I get to the gym, I don't need to warm up, I'm just going to stretch and then go in. When actually the warm up is more important than the stretch. So a lot of people end up coming in, doing a couple of stretches, and then if you like lifting weights, grabbing the weight and just pounding the weights out. Now that again, if you start to get your body warm enough to be able to take the exercise, then already you're on a plus. Rather than trying to do something where it might cause injury, especially that we don't do enough prevention things before we have to actually cure our body. So that's regarding, let's say, the food side. Now looking at the nutrition side, a lot of the times, if we're let's saying, one of the things that I struggle with sometimes is, let's say, intermittent fasting. So if I train twice a day, my window is affected by the fact that I train once at lunchtime and once, let's say, 6:30. When do I eat? I gotta eat much earlier, get that food digested to be able to, train. But then again, if I'm not fueling, I'm not training. Some people say train fasted. That might work, but then eventually as the day catches up with you and you have another session later on, that starts to affect how you are. So my habit was, when do I have to get up? When do I have to fuel? And then when do I have to get myself ready for work and training and the rest of it? Now I was speaking to Murad earlier and he was saying, how do you manage to fit all these in together? It's honestly, and Tanner was talking about this the other day. If you didn't check out my show with Tanner, it was really good. He said one thing that he really, really can't stand is when people say they don't have time. Now, I understand completely that our jobs are demanding, our families are demanding, the attention that's required to be able to execute each thing. And some of my other guests have also said, don't multitask. Stick to one thing and do it. I think it's the same thing with habits. I think rather than focusing on several things to be able to achieve, get yourselves set on just one thing at a time. And once you've mastered that and it becomes part of your lifestyle and it's something that you feel is normal, I think then start to look at improvements. And that's where we tend to overwhelm ourselves normally because we're not achieving everything we want to achieve in that small period. So the psychological part of it really comes down to mental fitness. And mental fitness in itself has a huge role in how we execute the physical side, the fuel, the recovery, because if you're not making time and not stressing yourself about these things, then you're able to execute them. And I think as simple as that sounds, that is the hardest thing to do, is simplify things. And I was talking to Charlie Soth about this earlier. Simplifying after you study these things is even harder because you don't want to miss out any details. Debo, the person who influenced and inspired this segment, actually said atomic habits are the small adjustments we make daily that will make a big impact. Like you said about making your bed, it's a small change that eventually becomes an impactful habit. And that's exactly spot on, Debo. Now, when you start to look at a more serious thing, let's say reaction to a situation that's uncomfortable, building up a habit where you're able to control that. Now, that could be through things like ice baths, which we've spoken about, guided breathing, meditation. If you're able to start the day well, 9 out of 10 times you're able to control what comes your way. And that is probably one of the things that I've resorted to. Yesterday, my cousin, Yassine, saw me plunging in an ice bath. Well, at least my legs anyway. And he was saying, why'd you do that? Now, managing anxiety and stress, which we all face, is something that gives you that idea of how to react to so many different things, And again, that's where I'm telling you guys that it really does come from how we control our emotions, how we control our anxiety, and how we respond to these things. So text me on 4215 Etisalat Urdu. What habits do you have? That's the theme of the day. And what do you do to work on them? I'm sure we're going to get more on this on the fourth segment because this is a very, very interesting topic. And shout out to Debo for throwing that my way. We're gonna take a quick break now, but think about it and let me know. I'm really interested to see what you think. We're going to have the Adan coming up, and right after that, I'll be right back on the only place to be at 3, the Halftime Show on Pulse 95.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri on Pulse 95.
Yes, welcome back. Almost missed my beat. How you guys doing? Hope you're doing well. Really, really good show today. Got some wicked comments as well. Debo was talking about habits. Terry was talking about them as well. And Debo was saying, I wake up, turn on some upbeat music and have a small dance party with myself that changes my tone for the day, and I can tell the difference when I don't do it. You know what? Why not? I love that. I love the fact you can just get up, have a little dance party, jam to whatever she wants to jam to. Hopefully something like this that we listen to in the background and just have a good time. And that's kind of something that I look at different people and think, wow, that's kind of cool. Having to watch TV every time you eat food at home. Yes, Vineet, that's another one. How many of you do that? Be honest. How many of you watch TV while you're eating food? That's another habit, actually. I do that sometimes, I have to admit. Ashraf Abdelhadi, yes. Right, okay. Arij, habit, I need a few touches with the football before a game, or else I get a little nervous before the game. That's a good one, actually, because I'll tell you something, Arij, I'm the complete opposite. I don't like to touch the ball before a game. Normally people take shots, and try and get the feel of the ball. I don't actually do that. I normally don't like touching the ball before the game, and then once the game starts and it does come, then okay, it happens. But yeah, that's a very, very good point. I like that. Adij also agrees with Benny, said yes, can't eat without TV. Yeah, you see, that's a good point. That's one of the hardest ones to do, I think. Shaymat says, every morning I motivate myself. That makes me feel satisfied, more confident and hardworking. So how do you motivate yourself, Shema? Let us know. Mohammed Al-Balushi says, Isa watches YouTube when he eats or if Tottenham are playing. Yeah, that might put me off my food if I'm watching Tottenham while I'm eating. But yeah, I can see the idea of YouTube. I mean, again, are we detaching ourselves from what's really happening? Would we notice things a lot more different if we didn't watch TV while we're eating? And also, how they say, eat slow, take your time, would that help with our digestion? See, I'm throwing some things your way just by the way that you guys are talking. Omar, what do you think the difference is between a habit and a ritual? Or is there? Very good question, Debo. I think that the difference between a habit and a ritual really comes down to, I think a ritual has more weight on it. And what I mean by that is a ritual is something that is built over time and maybe even passed over as from generations and things like that. But a habit is something that I feel you can kind of rectify, albeit, manageable. I think it's something we can do. A ritual is something where you kind of live by it, if that makes sense. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but let me know what you guys think. That's kind of where I'm looking at and thinking it's very, very different. But we are talking about a lot of things, and one of the things actually that's come to the UAE is UFC and Fight Island. And on Fight Island, there's a lot of really good things happening, especially, obviously, everyone is talking about Conor McGregor coming versus Dustin Poirier. But before that, we've got Max Holloway. And I like Max Holloway. I like what he stands for. Maybe it's the roots, where he comes from. Maybe it's the way, he's always saying he's blessed and he's blessed to be doing what he's doing. I think that's maybe something. He's fighting against Calvin Qatar, who's 22-4-0. Whilst Max Holloway is 21-6-0, which is going to be interesting for the featherweight main event, which is coming up this weekend, actually, in the UAE. And shout out to Mohamed Akawi as well for always giving me the information on the latest things that's happening with these superstars. In the welterweight division, Carlos Condit again is back, 31-13-0, and he faces Matt Brown. Now, a lot of these fighters, especially in the welterweight division, and you look at it's a co-main event, are very, very skilled practitioners. They're not people that just got there by luck. They do it because they love it. You can tell with Carlos Condit as well, with all the different camps he's been at and all the different ways he's kind of worked out. It's really, really interesting to see how he's adapted despite all these superstars coming in and out of the division. Who else have we got on there? You've got also Joaquin Buckley, which will face Alicio Di Chirico, if I can say that properly, and Punahil Soriano versus Dusko Todoric as well. Now, a lot of the people sometimes skip out the preliminary cards. I would tell you catch some of the best moments in the preliminaries. Phil Hawes against Nasruddin Imavov is another one I would keep an eye on. In the heavyweight division, you've got Carlos Felipe versus Justin Taffa. So there are a couple. For the ladies, the women bantamweight, Sarah Moras against Vanessa Mello. That's another good one, which I think would be interesting. And it's people are kind of overlooking what's happening with, there's 3 fights coming up to the next 10 days of UFC action, and everyone's looking at Conor McGregor and what kind of condition he's going to be in, or even what kind of mindset he's going to be in. So I'm very interested to see, Dana White was hyping him obviously yesterday, saying, this could be brutal. But I don't know how I would be if I was Dustin Poirier listening to the president of the UFC talking about, that main event, in the sense that Dustin Poirier, might get destroyed by Conor McGregor because of the focus. And you also question, and it makes us talk about it as well, why would you return back to the UFC when your endorsements and everything that you put your money into, your products, have done so well financially that you don't need to fight anymore? There must be something. There must be a love for the game, or a love for the fight game, to be able to still do it. And that's what I'm really, really interested in, to see Conor's mindset. And then what next? Will Khabib come out of retirement to face him? I know Khabib was kind of saying he was retired, but then Dana said he's trying to convince him. And Khabib spends a lot of time in the UAE, so I can imagine him consistently practicing and being, active. I think that's the most important thing. Yes, he might have struggled with, cutting weight and fighting, but he's at a level now where he can make them fight at his weight. And that's going to be interesting, whether we see a GSP fight, or whether we see a Conor fight, or even, Tony Ferguson, who has kind of been away from everything. Justin Gaethje, we haven't even mentioned him yet. There's a lot of fighters out there that would love to fight Khabib and go for that last dance, so to speak, with Khabib. But what do you guys think? 4215, it's a salat or slide into my DMs. I know there's people sending messages about the habits, but I'm going to put some Burna Boy, because I love Burna Boy. I'm going to put some Burna Boy, and then I'm going to go over those topics you guys have been talking about. And shout out to Raj as well, who's just joined on Pulse 95. See you in a bit.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri on Pulse 95.
Salam, welcome back to the Halftime Show. Thank you very much for connecting. Wow, what a show it's been. I think the theme of the day has been habits, and you guys have been keeping me on my toes the whole time, and also helping each other out. I like the fact that the community, especially the Halftime Show community, is normally on the Instagram live with me at Omar Al-Duri, and they're actually sharing ideas on habits and what they're doing. And I got to share some of them here. Debo says, sometimes to think about missing a habit once is an accident. Missing it twice is the start of a new habit. X, we miss making our bed twice leads to making excuses as why we don't need to. Very, very good. Love that. Almas is saying, my mum cleans and organizes when she's stressed. Yeah, I think that happens a lot. Shaymat says, sometimes I spoil my system with sleeping late and use the phone a lot, but how do I control these things and be more committed? Right, very, very good point. So a couple of things, Shaymat. I mentioned this in the break, but I'll say it again for all the listeners on Pulse 95 Radio. So we spoke about blue light, and we also spoke about guided meditation, the idea to be able to do something to detach yourself from, whatever you're thinking about, whatever's happening tomorrow. And I think that's a really, really good point. We tend to get ourselves, and like Debo said, we tend to get ourselves doing things unconsciously. But if you do it a couple of times, and it does become to be a habit, and that's something where we have to kind of work on together. Now on the show today, we spoke about, the modern athlete, looking at them, and especially for our youth, when they're successful, if they have bad habits and they get away with it, we think we can get away with it. And we spoke about Jamie Vardy having 3 Red Bulls and smoking before a match. But Jamie Vardy, and we always hear the cliche, one size doesn't fit all. Jamie Vardy is a different specimen and a different human being, and we're all different in our right. Sometimes we get away with things when we're younger, and as we get older, it doesn't tick the same way, it doesn't vibe the same way, it doesn't flow the same way. So you have to have that education to be able to know what works for you. I don't say one size works for everyone. I don't say one nutrition plan works for everyone, even one training regimen. You might like to box or do yoga or, I don't know, cycle. But that's where we kind of have to look at things and put things in perspective. And I think that's what a lot of the people today have been talking about. In terms of the smallest thing, like we said earlier, just doing your bed in the morning and having that set so you can have a fresh pair of sheets ready for you guys, or even a fresh, well-made bed for you when you go back to sleep. It kind of resets you and gets you ready for the next day. So these are all the small things we're talking about. Yesterday, we were doing something with Gabby and Matt Coe as well, which we're going to be bringing on the show next week. And he has this thing called Train to Stay Younger. Very, very interesting concept through an assessment that he put me through, and I'll tell you, it was tough. And he put Gabby through as well, which was very, very interesting. And we're going to show you that footage next week on the YouTube. So make sure you tune in next week to that show. That's going to be a very good one. I've wanted to get Matt on the show for a while, so I'm very interested to share that experience with you guys and have him in the studio here live with you guys. So make sure you have your questions ready. Debo saying, change where you do things if you want to start a new habit. Same space equals same distractions or habits. Very, very good. I love it. See, Debo, if Debo wasn't in Florida, I'd get her in here. She's a fitness professional as well, and a very, very good one. And she's raised a lot of good points today. And that's why I say to you guys, if you have something you want the Halftime Show to discuss or talk about, share it, because other people probably feel the same way and experience the same things. And that's why, the Halftime Show is so special and would be nothing without you guys. So thank you so much. We have reached full time on the Halftime Show. I hope you've had a great day. I hope you've enjoyed the show as well. And if you're watching this on the rerun on YouTube, please do smash a like, share, and let us know what you'd like to hear more of. Guys, unbelievable show, great points, really enjoyed it, and I will see you back on Saturday. Coming up next is the Afternoon Karak with Mika Hatiya and Haisha Madmi, so make sure you stay tuned for more on the only place to be at 3, the Halftime Show on Pulse 95.
If you liked this episode of The Halftime Show, drop a like and subscribe.
95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.